I remember the first time I caught my reflection slipping at the edges, as though the mirror was unsure who it held. The boy staring back had been born into two broken worlds, abandoned by his parents and cradled by my grandparents' fierce devotion. In their arms, I learned that love could feel like a precious currency, measured, rationed, conditional, not the wild, unending tide I'd glimpsed on stolen TV moments. To be loved was a blessing to be earned, not a birthright I could claim. I felt as out of place at school as a lone weed in a manicured lawn. My feet, bruised and calloused from years of slipping across our 3-bedroom country house's cold, rough-hewn boards, hesitated on the polished playground, as if unsure they belonged on anything that gleamed. I was one of 13, rising before dawn to haul firewood, scrub floors, and straighten plastic trash bags nailed over drafty windows. Tasks that left me feeling more like an indentured servant than a son. Beyond our doorstep lay chicken coops clucking into misty mornings, pig pens squelching in the mud, and endless cotton fields glowing white beneath the sun. In spring and fall, pecan orchards swayed heavy with promise, their nuts dropping like punctuation on the dirt roads where I trudged my chores. Yet sometimes that winter chill, seeping through thin walls and makeshift insulation, was a welcome reminder that I was alive. Each shiver was proof of a raw, unvarnished truth. In classrooms framed by linoleum and fluorescent lights, I swallowed my anger and skipped homework, convinced that quiet compliance might finally buy me a place among my peers. But belonging never arrived on those terms. It had to be built from the inside out. Abuse and betrayal painted trust into dust. I armored up, wearing stoicism like a second skin. Vulnerability was a luxury I could not afford. Even selfless acts, helping friends, shouldering family burdens, were undertaken not for compassion, but to latch on to the fleeting affirmation of my worth. In corporate boardrooms, I reenacted the same play. Deadlines became threats. Performance reviews masked judgments on my very being. And every yes I uttered forged another link in the chain of obligation. The entrepreneur's hustle, publicly lauded as resilience, hit a frantic bid to outrun an internal voice whispering, "You don't deserve to rest." Then came the manipulators, the lovers who coaxed intimacy only to tighten the screws of control. The friends whose "after all I've done for you" whispered guilt daggers. The managers whose veiled warnings carried the weight of career-ending judgments. I mistook acquiescence for harmony and silence for safety, until migraines and sudden tremors in my chest forced me to listen. My body was shouting a truth I refused to hear. This frequency of self-denial was unsustainable. Mapping my psyche felt like archaeology. I unearthed self-destructive patterns masquerading as strengths. The caretaker praised for compassion, the problem solver celebrated for selflessness, the workhorse admired for grit. These virtues had kept me running, but always at the expense of my well-being. Beneath them lay deeper stealth beliefs. Success was for others, not for me. Money was a distant dream. If I paused, even for a breath, I risked unraveling the fragile narrative of my worth. Yet awareness became my lantern. I learned to name the impulses that once ruled me. When the urge to overperform surged, I'd pause and ask, is this ambition or the echo of a childhood belief that I'm only worthy when I prove myself? I journaled like an archivist, tracing the tangled roots of my conditioning until I could sever the worst of them. Authenticity emerged as my compass. In boardrooms, I began admitting when I didn't have all the answers. I shared lessons from failure. The vulnerability this demanded felt like standing unclothed before a jury. But each admission widened the aperture through which connection and empathy could flow. In friendships, I traded superficial small talk for soul-bearing conversations about fear, longing, and hope. The agency grew from these practices. I reclaimed my power with every no that protected my peace and every yes that ignited my spirit. I built routines not as indulgences, but as declarations that my life and my well-being mattered. Sunrise walks, weekly therapy, small celebrations of success. These rituals became the bricks of my new foundation. My service overseas tested me in ways I never anticipated. On foreign soil, I confronted literal danger. At home, I faced the quieter wars of trauma and alienation. I returned to boardrooms and bedtime feedings of my 2 sons, striving to be the father I never had, and wrestling with the fear that I might fail them too. Their laughter now rings through my chest like gospel, a daily reminder that joy is a revolutionary act in a world that asks you to hide your smile. Still, vulnerability remains the steepest summit. Each moment I dared to trust, whether with a business partner, a friend, or the vulnerable parts of myself, I risked disappointment, felt the ache of self-worth eroding when others proved unsteady. Those wounds stung, but I forfeited the chance to connect, heal, and become every time I recoiled. I've seen my life as a blueprint, no static plan, but an evolving draft. The foundations once laid by childhood abandonment and conditional love now support beams of courage and compassion. Boundaries and rest have reinforced the trusses shaped by manipulation and burnout. And between every fracture, I've inserted fresh planks of trust, hope scaffolding, and self-respect cables. My story isn't linear. It's a spiral staircase of breakthroughs and setbacks. I still feel that old tremor when praise feels like a test, or when conflict tempts me to silence. But I carry tools to catch myself. The steadying breath, the mantra, I am enough. The community of fellow seekers who hold a mirror to my worth. I lean into discomfort, understanding that true growth demands it. It's possible to become everything you want to be while also becoming everything you never imagined. Because choice charts only half the course. Circumstance charts the other half. I've learned that self-destructive behaviors often hide behind socially admired traits, that the person praised for resilience may be drowning inside, that unspoken beliefs about money and worth can sabotage success from beneath the surface. Today, I honor each scar as a testimony of past survival and a milestone of current strength. I practice saying no as an act of love toward myself and those who depend on me. I practice saying yes when my heart ignites. I choose rest and seek help when my well runs dry. I name the stealthy beliefs that try to steer me back to old mediocrity and subject them to the light of truth. As I look toward the future, I remember a small yet seismic moment from my childhood. I'd saved every penny for weeks to buy a fancy click pen with multicolored inks, marveling at its promise of bright lines and endless possibilities. I brought it to school to share, my pride blooming with each click of its barrel. When I returned home, that pen wasn't the issue. It was the fact I'd taken it without permission. 2 days later, the accusation surfaced, and the brutal beating that followed haunted me for years. The pen itself vanished from memory. The pain did not. It became another scaffold in the prison of unworthiness, proof that even joy could bring punishment. Perhaps that's why Antoine Fisher's story resonates so profoundly with me. Watching him set out to find his family, I felt every surge of hope and heartbreak stir within my chest, each pulse echoing my own quest for belonging. When that movie played on our battered TV, I could see clearly the world I longed for, and bitterly, the one I'd been given. In the hush of my room, I poured those aching questions into a poem, each line a confession of yearning and shame, believing its words were safe behind my door. Then came the day I discovered it, awash in yesterday's laundry, its edges stained and crumpled, stuffed deep in the dirty hamper's cramped pocket. My heart froze as dread slithered through me. Who had found it? Who had traced those verses and glimpsed my secrets? I imagined my siblings rifling through piles of grimy clothes, my grandparents' cautious eyes scanning my shame. The paper felt heavier than any brick in my hand, a testament to every silent fear I dared to write down. I trembled at the thought of my rawest self laid bare, exposed to ridicule or punishment. My mind spun a million questions. Who read about my loneliness? Who knew of the nights I wept beneath a quilt that never warmed me? Would they laugh, condemn, or worse, erase me with their indifference? The oppressive weight of that poem, stained and violated, pressed against my ribs, and I realized that words meant to heal could be weaponized, turning hope into terror. In that moment, the attic of my own soul felt like a trap. Vulnerability no longer a sanctuary, but a snare. My poem, once a lifeline, had become proof that I wasn't invisible, but painfully, irrevocably human. And with that terrifying knowledge, I understood that courage isn't the absence of fear, but the resolve to speak anyway, even when your secrets lie waiting to be found. Oh, for many. So I wrote my own, and believe it was met with ridicule. That is almost too painful to repeat. But it gave me strength. Tony, you rose with dawn's first light to sweep the floor and scrub each tile. Chores by day, beatings by night. A child with steel in every smile. Your back would bear the leather's sting, yet tears you learned to hide away. Boys don't cry, your elders would sing. Their words are a guard you wear each day. They split your world in half so cold. One home of echoes, one of grace. Still in your chest, a fire bold. Kept loving when you'd been displaced. You scrubbed the pots and mended dreams. Each task is a lesson in control. Though pain would carve its jagged seams, hope watered deep within your soul. Unconditional arms held tight when all you'd known was harsh demand. A gentle voice in the dark of night taught you to rise, to take a stand. Now see the man from chores refined, forged stronger by each tear you'd quell. Tony, your heart is in love designed, a proof that from your scars you dwell. Who will cry for the little boy, abandoned without his own? Who will cry for the little boy? He cried himself to sleep. Who will cry for the little boy? He never had for keeps. Who will cry for the little boy? He walked the burning sand. Who will cry for the little boy? The boy inside the man. Who will cry for the little boy? Who knows well hurt and pain. Who will cry for the little boy? He died, again and again. Who will cry for the little boy? A good boy he tried to be. Who will cry for the little boy? Who cries inside of me? I remember showing this poem to my fourth grade teacher, Karen Allen, in an empty classroom, 2 reading levels ahead of my peers. I had to lie about why I was there, terrified that an open display of my pain was somehow wrong. My aunt's notebook of explicit rap lyrics sat untouched by reprimand, so I learned that I, alone, was the problem. Yet even in that silent betrayal, I found a spark of defiance. If my truth could survive ridicule, then perhaps it could also become my refuge, my redemption, my call to stand, pen in hand, against a world that taught me to hide my scars instead of singing their story.